You know what I really hate is people who are like, "Oh my God, you're so quiet. Oh, why don't you like talk more? You should talk more because you're so quiet." It's like, has that ever helped anybody ever? But if, however, you do find yourself sitting around with your family and your friend group and they're just all talking and having a great time and you're just like there, maybe having a good time, not really knowing what to say, then this video will be really helpful for you. And there's definitely nothing shameful or wrong with being a person that doesn't talk a lot, but I think many people get to a point where they feel like they want to express themselves more, they want to participate more, and if that's you, then this video will really help you. My name is Rita. Welcome to Raise Your Voice. If you find this video useful, please like it, and if you want more videos to help you with your communication, then you can feel free to subscribe to my channel. But now we're going to talk about how to talk more. And the first step in actually talking more is to do a bit of a psychological deep dive into your feelings and finding the truth of why it is that you as a person struggle talking a lot. So I know that your instinctive reaction might just be like, well, Rita, I just don't talk a lot. That's just my personality. And yeah, I mean, that is your personality if you don't talk a lot. But most people have a reason for why they don't talk so much. And for most people, there's this kind of like block that is preventing them from just kind of live streaming their thoughts in the way that other people do. Because most of us are very social innately. We want to connect with people around us. We want to influence the people around us. And if you look at, kids, for example, they're just so excited to share this twig they found or just babble at whomsoever. So there's just this innate kind of human desire to connect. And again, we're all different people, but we all do share this, need for connection and human relationships that necessitates communication. So then if we're also, innately social, blah, 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 then what is it that happens that creates this block that makes it so hard to say anything? Obviously, only you know your personal story, but in my experience, there are two different things that can lead to this. So first of all, there is a fear of consequences. So if you, in your formative years with your parents, your family, your school friends, other friends, your community, whatever, if when you spoke you were met with some sort of negative consequence, then you just carry that fear with you throughout life. So by negative consequence, I mean somebody getting angry at you when you don't say anything wrong, people bullying you, criticizing you, mocking you, just like reacting in any way after you say something to make you feel bad, right? So many of us, have some sort of experiences like this, and all of these experiences affect people differently. So, it doesn't mean that, your father needed to yell at you every time you said something. It could just be a few times in your life that you could have responded very strongly on and just carry it with you. So it's just really important to be aware that there is this fear of the negative consequences that makes you worried about the things that you're saying to a higher degree than other people. And then the other component in this block of speaking is this low expectations of engagement. As I said, the reason that humans love to communicate is because we like to connect with each other. So we want to tell each other things like, look at this stick I found, or I had an oat latte today. You want to say these things so that the other person learns more about who you are, what you've been through, your values, etc. And also to create kind of a shared landscape of experiences. So if you have been met with indifference when you speak, then you don't have that expectation. So again, if you think back on your family, your friends, school, teachers, whatever, how were you met when you spoke? If a lot of the times when you were like, I'm so excited about blah, blah, and your family was like, yeah, whatever, nobody cares, or just literally don't acknowledge you, then you kind of learn that there's no point saying things because you're not going to get that engagement. And if you don't say anything, then at least you avoid that pain of rejection. So you have these two components, this fear of negative consequences or this fear of kind of rejection, being ignored. That are the two main components that constitute this kind of block for you. And I really urge you to think back on your life, these experiences you've had, just intuitively. What kinds of memories come up when you think about expressing, emotions or talking about your day or whatever normal communication acts are? And then think about how you were met and whether that affected you. So maybe you have thought about this, or maybe you're like, well, I know my mom always ignored me, Rita. That doesn't really help me because I can't undo it. And yeah, you can't undo it now, but the benefit in doing this kind of reflection is to realize that your behavior, your personality is a logical consequence of the experiences you have had, not something that is, innate, unchangeable, immutable quality of you. So there's nothing about you that necessarily means that you are just quiet and, or you're boring or you have nothing to say. That's just kind of where you are right now. And as a person, you can develop new experiences that will help take you to a new place of communication. So, of course, your goal here should not be to go from having a blank mind to being like the life of the party, but you probably want to increase the amount that you communicate in most settings, and you definitely want to increase just the amount you're able to share in the contexts that matter the most for you. And this is definitely possible, no matter how bad you feel now or how blank your mind is now. So what is it that you need to do? I think the way to do this is to learn to rely on your intuition once again and to recalibrate your threshold for what's worth sharing. So right now, when you have this block, this fears of the rejection or negative consequences, it feels like it's very important to get what you say correctly. And you may also just have this fear response that blocks you from really knowing what you think, how you feel, what you're thinking. For other people, it feels so much easier because they can just directly say what's inside and put it into words. But if you've been kind of a quiet person for much of your life, then you are lacking in this skill. So what you want to do is to see it as a skill you're missing rather than an innate personality problem you have. And the skill is similar to any kind of translation, right? You're starting with the inner language of your sensations, impressions, feelings, thoughts, who you are inside, and translating it into this outside world of social cues, body language, tone, just literal words, telling stories. So you're trying to learn how to bridge the gap between what's inside you and what is outside you. And of course, it's more difficult for you than it would be for a person that's been practicing for 20 years and talking a lot every day. But that doesn't mean it's impossible or even super difficult. It's definitely something that you can achieve. So how are we going to do that? We're going to do that by finding opportunities for safety, right? Because you want to find opportunities where you can actually align with your inner feelings and where you could practice building this bridge. And to do that, you need to feel safe. So if you've been met with kind of hostility and indifference before, now you are looking for situations where you will say something and then you will be met with care and with engagement, right? So although you can't undo what's happened before, you can build new associations for yourself. You can feel like it's worth saying things because you will be met with care and engagement. And then you can also practice your skills in saying things so it becomes easier as you develop a better sense of how to translate what's inside to what's outside. Does that sound good? Yeah, so I have 5 specific tips for you who wants to do this journey. So my first tip is that you should reflect on your social circle. And by this, I mean that you need to critically identify which are the people who I feel more safe with or the people who I feel less safe with. If you have this problem of not being able to talk much, then it may be very normal in your life that people don't expect you to talk, don't ask you questions. When you talk, they don't engage with what you're saying, or they make sarcastic comments. So you may just be surrounded by lots of unsafe relationships where, of course, talking is not a good idea. It's not smart if you're getting just bad consequences. So I encourage you to reflect on your social circle, identify these less safe situations, stand up for yourself by withdrawing, just even a bit there. And on the flip side, find people who seem like when you say something, they want to engage with you and they want to connect with you and open up a bit more towards those people. So consciously pivot towards situations where communication feels more possible and more safe. My second tip is to practice generating content. As I've said, this is a skill that you're trying to build that is weaker in you than in other people. If somebody asks somebody how their day is and they answer, every day for 20 years, that person is really good at summarizing what the main events are, what their feelings were, how it just makes them feel about their direction of their life, all of these things. If nobody has ever asked you and really cared how your day is, then of course you just lack that ability. But it doesn't mean that you can't learn. And so what you need to do is to practice coming up with these words. And it feels very silly and awkward, but you just have to try it out. And I think the best person to practice with is yourself. But of course you can practice with a safe loved one. And how do you do this? Just ask yourself follow-up questions and try to say more things even if they don't feel super, well said, articulate, etc. Think about, that you're just practicing. So how was your day? It was good. Okay, why was it good? How was it good? Who did you meet today? Where did you go? What kinds of things did you do? What was the best part of the day? What was the worst part of the day? Really treat yourself with the kindness that you would treat, your 7-year-old cousin who you're picking up from school, and just let yourself actually get through kind of this content in your head to practice coming up with the words to describe your inner experience to the people around you. And just forgive yourself for not having the perfect skills as it is, because you're a bit behind. So my third tip is to take small risks. So it may feel you should try to put yourself into a party and be the life of the party to prove that you're not afraid of talking. But this is self-bullying, I feel. What you can do though is just try out some things that feel a bit scary to you and see what the consequences are. So if your family was always critical of you for being boring, try saying some boring things to the people around you and see how they respond. Because most of the times, you can change your social surroundings to be met with this care and engagement. You don't have to be stuck in these negative patterns. So just because your parents thought it was really boring when you talked about school, doesn't mean your friends think it's that. It doesn't mean your partner thinks it's boring. So just experiment by taking a small risk, I'm going to share one thing that happened today, and just note to yourself, did I get a good response? Did I get a bad response? It's also a good opportunity to improve your communication, because if you really try to tell people a funny story 30 times and nobody thinks it's funny, it's a great opportunity for you to reflect on how to improve your sense of humor, right? But let yourself have these moments where you take a risk, see it as a risk, be proud of yourself for taking the risk, and treat it accordingly. My next tip is to just get explicit help. Ask people you trust, such as your family member, loved ones, friends, for a bit of help. It doesn't need to be you giving them a half an hour discussion of all of your deepest fears. You can just say, hey, I'm trying to become a bit more talkative. I'm not super good at it, and I would appreciate some help sometimes. For example, could you ask me more direct questions? Or could you encourage me a bit more when I speak by like nodding or just making affirmational statements, right? Again, because you just want to create this feeling of safety for yourself. And if your mom or your sister or your friend at school is willing to just be like, oh, hey, like, yeah, no, that was good. Oh, like, what did you think about that? And just remember to keep you in mind, it can be an easy way for you to practice feeling the care and the engagement, because those are the things you want. I know asking for help can be really scary, but it can also be super rewarding. And then my last tip is just to practice nonverbal communication. And I know this is a bit different from what we've been talking about, but I think, as I said, the trick with like talking more is that you want to learn to open this inner communication out to the world. So it can be nice to practice in a non-verbal way. So try to find some ways that can be expressing your creativity. That could be like doing something fancy like art or coloring books where you get to make expressive choices. It could be through your fashion or cooking where you just make decisions about how things should be. And you can also see these things as an expression of yourself. And again, it just helps you build this sense of safety that it is okay to express yourself and to make these choices. So that's about it for my practical tips. I just want to end the video by saying that there is nothing like fundamentally wrong with being a person who doesn't talk a lot, but that if you want to talk a lot, there is just, so many people out there who are also searching for social connection and belonging, and that's all any of us really want. So I think that this is a goal that is really worth pursuing, and I think with just a bit of practice, you will get really far.